Hey beautiful people, what is up and welcome back to my channel and welcome to Club Jamila. I'm calling this Club Jamila because that is how I've been thinking about this video in my mind. And let me explain. So I first want to say thank you for all of the love that I got on my video that I did about all of the brands that I'm canceling in 2023. I did not expect so many people to watch it. It's gotten a lot of views and a lot of new folks have kind of come to my channel off of that. So huge thank you to all of the love that I've gotten on that. But on that video, I actually did receive like 2 comments of folks that were like, okay, so you're canceling all of these brands. What are you going to be buying in 2023? Which brands are you going to be on the lookout for? So I thought that was a great idea to talk about sort of like the positives, you know, what are the brands that are kind of on my short list? And I'm calling this Club Jamila because the way I've been looking at it is that there are sort of 2 lines. There's the VIP, like the top brands that I almost certain I'm going to be purchasing most, if not all, of their releases. And then there's general admission, where it's going to be a little bit more like, meh, it could go either way. And I'm not super invested in the brand. So, welcome to Club Jamila. Let's dive in. If this is your first time watching me, I am Jamila and I love all things beauty. I love all things makeup. I love all things skincare. And I especially love sharing my tips and tricks for how to find high-end and luxury beauty products at bargain prices. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, I would absolutely love if you would hit that subscribe button, ring the bell so you don't miss out on any uploads, and join this community, join this fam over here. So, like I said, we're going to talk about all of the brands that are kind of on my short list. Quick disclaimer or just sort of overarching comment. Nothing here is really set in stone. And my general approach to makeup shopping this year is that I'm going to be discerning about anything that I bring into my collection. So even the brands that are in the VIP, that doesn't mean I'm going to buy everything from the brand. It means that I'm going to be more inclined to purchase because it is a favorite brand of mine. But I am still looking at every single release as like a, do I need this? Do I want this? Am I just looking at it harder because I want to collect it so that I can be a little bit more informed in my decisions? Since going through, you know, the need to declutter and get things out of my life, I have felt like less attachment to collecting everything. I've decluttered even like some Pat McGrath palettes, which I never thought was possible. So I know that going into this year, I feel a lot more comfortable not having to get every single release that a brand puts out. So let's kick it off with a bang and start with the VIPs for Club Jamila in 2023. Okay, so this will come as no surprise, but, and this is in no particular order, but I'm going to start off with a brand that y'all are not going to be even surprised by, and that is Pat McGrath. Patricia has her ways. Patricia has her flaws, but at the end of the day, I think everyone here kind of knows that I love Pat McGrath products. I think that the brand has a lot of flaws and the people that are running it need to figure out some things. But in terms of the quality of the shadows in the products, I've said this before, Pat McGrath is my absolute favorite eyeshadow formula. There's just something different and special about her shadows. And when I wear it, I feel like super special, super like glam, and it just kind of raises my spirits. And that is one of the reasons why I'm always inclined to purchase from Pat and to wear her products, because of the feeling that it gives me, both in terms of applying her products as well as in like wearing it. Like having a Pat McGrath palette on always makes me have like a different level of confidence. I get tons more compliments than ever. And because of how it feels having it on and how it feels during the application process, because it's so blendable, so pigmented, just like perfect, especially for someone of a deeper skin tone, like finding products that just work, it just makes me feel good. So like that is definitely a brand that is on my short list, and I'm going to be looking out for like pretty much everything from Pat. It doesn't mean I'm going to buy everything, but I'm always looking to see what she puts out, because up until now, we haven't gotten a full face from Pat. She doesn't have any brow products. She has no bronzer. So I get a sense that this year we might see some new products come out from her line that are sort of separate from her eyeshadow. So I'm going to be looking at the entire brand really closely, and there's a definite guarantee that I will be picking up some things. And for example, when Pat releases a mothership, it becomes my mothership. I have the collector's mentality when it comes to the mothership. So there is like 100% chance that when a new mothership releases this year, I will be adding it to my collection. Just saying. The next brand on my short list is actually Natasha Denona. Like Pat and Tasha, again, both brands that have their issues, But at the end of the day, their products are top quality and there's just no arguing about it. And with Natasha, I've come to this sort of place where I know that she's going to release some products that work for me and some products that don't. So like I talked about in my makeup isn't supposed to fit, isn't one size fits all video, when Natasha released her retro glam palette, which was like pretty pastel, I just knew that that wasn't for me, and I didn't feel any kind of way about it because she had previously released her My Dream palette, which actually worked so well for me. So, you know, I have this sort of sense when it comes to Natasha that there's certain things I'm gonna want and certain things I'm not gonna want. Even like thinking about her entire brand, I am pretty sold on her eyeshadow as being the product that I love from her line, but I've never felt the itch or the urge to like buy her lip products. I do have like 2 blush palettes from her that I've never touched and I should probably declutter. So when it comes to the other products in her line, I've never been really inclined to reach for them or buy them. Not even reach for them, buy them so that I could reach for them. So it's one of the, for this sort of short list, it really is her eyeshadows that I'm thinking about. And I know that there are going to be things that I'm like, no, not interested. But it is one of those brands that gets kind of pushed to the front of the line because Natasha's quality is bomb.com. Okay, the next brand on my short list is another one that's not going to come as a surprise to anyone, and that's Sydney Grace. Something about Sydney Grace eyeshadows is just... ugh, I don't even know how to describe it, but they have some kind of voodoo, some kind of magic powder or something in there that just makes their eyeshadows just perfection. They are simple, just beautiful shadows. Like, that's what it is. It's just simple. No fuss, no muss. They have pigment that, honestly, like, it's hard for me to compare it to anything else because their pigment is out of this world and their metallics are so high shine and super sparkly. When I couldn't find what I needed in the Natasha Denona Retro Glam and they released that Mel bundle, that was all I needed. And when it comes to Sydney Grace shadows, I'm always looking to see what else are they coming out with, because I know that they're going to work for me. Their mattes are pigmented and they blend like a dream, and their metallics are some of the strongest metallics on the market. They don't do a lot when it comes to like the duochrome, multichrome fanciness, and they don't like play around in their formula where it's like you have like super creamy or super, and it might crease on oily lids or all of that. It's just simple, and as far as I know, every single person that's used Sydney Grace shadows, for them it's worked regardless of whether or not they have oily lids, oily skin, dry lids. It just seems like a universal formula that seems to work. And Sydney Grace is a brand, in my opinion, they don't release an overwhelming amount of products throughout the year, so it's really easy for me to want to be influenced to purchase from them and to monitor what they're releasing, because I feel like they have really thought out curated releases, and they only release what, 3 to 4 palettes for the year. They do their bundles, like monthly bundles where you'll get a bundle of singles, so that is something that they have. But other than that, I don't think that they have an overwhelming amount of products that are being released that would make me feel overwhelmed in terms of monitoring them closely. So they are 100% on my short list because I just absolutely love them. I did receive a lot of PR from them in 2022, and hopefully I'm able to get some in 2023, fingers crossed. If not, I have no problems buying for the brand because I really do support their products. And yeah, in my ranking eyeshadow formulas video, it was number 2, so you know I love the formula. Okay, next up is Blend Bunny Cosmetics, and this is still the VIPs. Blend Bunny Cosmetics, I have said this before, and I'm sorry to sound like a broken record, but if you have not been here before, I have to say it again. They have my favorite matte eyeshadow formula. Hands down, period, just it is what it is. And the Blend Bunny formula is so good that I literally keep a Blend Bunny palette on my desk every week. At least once a week, I reach for my Blend Bunny shadows because I needed to supplement what other palettes aren't giving me. I think that the Blend Bunny mattes are so blendable and buttery, and the palettes are curated in such a way that if you are not a makeup artist, if you have minimal experience or expertise when it comes to blending and mixing shadows, it's all laid out for you. And I have really appreciated how it's inspired me to play in color. And I remember when I got my first Blend Bunny palette, the Blends palette, And it sat for months because I was like, I don't know what to do with this. It was a rainbow palette, and I was just like, I don't know what to do with it. And then when I finally tried it, I was like, I can't believe I let this sit for months. And since then, I have purchased from Blend Bunny religiously, and I've also started receiving PR from Blend Bunny. And I can say that the quality of the products have not changed, you know, from the first to the last. I think that they have this very sort of stable matte formula that I love. The shimmers, not necessarily my go-to, and I could honestly do without it. The shimmers in the Dollhouse, though, is bomb. They do have a couple different shimmer formulas, and I think that that is where they're trying to figure out which formula works best. So the shimmers I'm not, you know, sold on, but the mattes. And I'm not necessarily one that loves a matte heavy palette, and all of their palettes are matte heavy, and I still reach for them like just all the time. So definitely on my short list, one that I will 100% purchase. I think I will get their PR throughout the year, but if I don't, I would buy it on my own. And I might need more of these tumblers. I have 2 of these, you guys. 2 of these tumblers. I at least hope that they have more merch coming out, because I've been really into merch from these brands lately. Okay, keeping it moving, because we still have 3 more to go in the VIP category, and the sun is setting, so sorry if the lighting is a little bit off. So the next brand is Adept Cosmetics. So Adept is one of those brands that is like a bit conflicting for me, because it's a brand that the formula is kind of shifting and changing. I've said this before again, so apologies for sound like a broken record, but some of the earlier Adept palettes have a older matte formula that I don't like. I just, no. And since then, they've reformulated their palettes. Not reformulated their palettes, but the newer palettes have a newer matte formula, which I really, really like. When it comes to shadows, for me, mattes can make or break a palette. And Adept is like one of like maybe one brand where, despite me not liking the mattes, I kept buying the palettes because the shimmers were so good. So it is a brand that, you know, even though I've like complained about the matte formula, the shimmers stand on their own so well that I was willing to bypass the mattes and just pull in from my Viseart or my Blends mattes, and because the shimmers were just so good. And it's one where I think that the palettes that they release are really beautifully curated. I know that they have the, what's it called? The Arrow palette coming out. This is kind of part of the, it seems like their DC series. First they did House of L, which is, you know, Superman, Arrow, Green Arrow, part of the DC universe. And I used to watch both of those shows and really, really enjoyed it. So seeing that they're bringing out this one, which is green themed, I'm 100% picking that up because I just love the Adept shimmer formula. And I'm hoping that the mattes that come in that new palette are gonna be the newer matte formula, which is just so much better, so much more blendable and easy to work with. So Adept is one of those palettes that I have on my short list because I'm really like, I really like the quality of their shadows, and I want to see kind of where things go. And I'm hoping that this is the year in which the Adept formula really settles. If you've been following the brand for a while, you know that for some of their older palettes, they've reformulated a lot. There's like the original Plain Jane remastered, and I think like a 3rd version of it. There's the Amulet versus Amulet New. So they have been through a couple of iterations in terms of formula and reformulating the same palette over and over again. So I really hope that they settle and just, you know, this is the formula going forward, because what they have now works really well. Either way, they are on my VIP list and a brand that I have my eye on and will probably end up purchasing all of their palettes that they release this year. Oh, and I do have a code with Adept Cosmetics, so it will be linked down below. If I have codes for any of these brands, it's in my description box. So if you want to pick up any of the products that they have at a slightly bit of a discount, my code will be linked down below, and it will let you know if it's an affiliated code or not. Okay. The next palette in the VIP list is Nomad Cosmetics. Sorry, the next brand. Nomad Cosmetics. I love Nomad. I think that they are the answer to the super hyper sparkly indie formula that everyone kind of has. Now, where Adept is high shine, sparkle, multi-chrome, flip, almost wet looking kind of shadows, Nomad is soft, powdery, like really pigmented mattes, but really blendable and not super sparkly shadows. So it's like 2 sides of a very different coin. So I like having Nomad palettes in my collection because sometimes I don't want the very intense indie sparkle that is kind of like the traditional indie shadows that are super sparkly. And Nomad is one of those brands where you get really nice shine, but it's not the one that kind of like sticks out. And I think that because it is a more powdery formula, if you have textured lids or if you have sort of issues with oily lids and creasing, you're able to wear the Nomad shadows in a way where it doesn't disrupt anything and it lasts really long throughout the day. And I think Nomad is also one of those brands where the formula has improved over time. Some of their earlier palettes has a more putty texture like shimmer formula, and some of these newer ones are a little bit more softer and powdery, like I said. And Nomad is another brand that I do receive PR from, and so it's one that I am certainly going to be keeping an eye out and seeing where things go. Last year they actually released this Christmas palette that had a new shimmer formula that was more toppery type of shimmers that I did not like. So I hope that's not going to be the direction that they go in with their palettes this year, because I did not like that formula very much. But it's one that I'm always excited to see what they release, because they do the best job I've ever seen any brand do in terms of taking a particular theme and crafting an entire palette around it. And as someone who loves travel more than anything else, I'm always really inspired by their palettes because it's themed around travel, and they do such an amazing job in terms of looking at specific locations and then tying it to this palette, to their palettes. And one of the things I really appreciate is that for every palette that they release, they donate a portion of the proceeds to the country or the destination that they visit, which most larger brands don't do, and most brands don't have that level of philanthropy attached to it. So very excited to see what they release. And the last VIP brand is Odin's Eye. Odin's Eye, like, they just went full force when it comes to like next level stuff. It's like they had their products before the Legendary Divisa collabs that were nice and they were okay, and then they did the Legendary Divisa collabs with, you know, Annette and Judy and Tina, and then everything just went like full force forward. And every palette that they've released since then has had top-notch quality, has had shades that work on my skin tone where I never have any issues with it. And I have been very intrigued by the color stories that they put out. They don't release an overwhelming amount of products each year, so I really appreciate that as well. And what they do release, it's really beautiful. Now, I have not been able to try anything other than their shadows, and I know that they did, like, for their Solman 2 collection, I believe they had blushes and highlights and all of that I would still love to get my hands on, but we're being thoughtful about what we bring in. But yeah, it's one of those brands that it's just amazing quality, really pigmented, super blendable, and one that even their multi-chromes, and they do include multi-chromes in their palettes, top notch. So I'm gonna keep an eye on it, and it's also on the more affordable side for indie, so it's definitely one of those brands that's in my VIP list. Okay, so let's talk about general admission. These are all of the brands that are kind of in my, I'm watching you, but like not as hard as I'm watching all of the brands in my VIP list. So these are brands that I'm still very interested in seeing what they put out, but honestly, it's a huge toss-up as to whether or not I decide to purchase from the brand. Not because they're bad or anything, but because I'm trying to have a really curated collection and not have like 20 million brands that I'm monitoring and trying to keep an eye out on. So in my brands to watch list, I have first and foremost Glamlight. Glamlight is one of those brands that it really piqued my interest in 2021 when they did their it was their drinks collection. It was the happy hour collection, and it was all based off of drinks. And I really enjoyed that collection because one, the palettes were in regular shapes, so it was like a square palette, easy to store, it wasn't food themed, and I thought that the quality in Glamlight was amazing. They have a superb matte eyeshadow formula that I really appreciated, and I thought that the shimmers worked well. And then come to find out last year, they actually improved upon their formula. So still really pigmented, buttery, blendable mattes, but now the shimmers tend to be less of the putty-like formula and one that is a little bit on the drier side, but still super impactful, and it sticks to the lids really, really well. And now that they have this newer formula, and it still is a very affordable brand, which I appreciate, it's definitely a brand that is on my radar and one that I want to look into and keep an eye out of. The reason why I didn't hit the VIP list is because, you know, last year, after they did that happy hour collection, I was like full steam ahead. I want to see whatever Glamlight puts out. And then they started releasing these collections that just did not catch my eye. So like the Barbie collection, they had like a whole Hershey's Kisses thing, then some Frosted Flakes, and all these other collabs that were just like, oh, why? You were doing so well with the Happy Hour collection. And that really made me kind of like fall back from the brand, because I was like, okay, not interested anymore. But them Scooby-Doo palettes redeemed Glamlight for me. So they are on my list of brands that I've been watching, but I feel like I'm going to end up being very selective with them, because I don't want any weird shaped palettes. I don't want anything that's like burgers or pizzas, and all that stuff just does not resonate with me. And I don't want anything that's overly corny and tied to like a specific theme. One thing about Glamlight is that they're going to collab. So they're going to do Frosted Flakes, Scooby-Doo, Hershey's Kisses, Barbie. I don't think I've ever really seen them just put out a product that's not tied to something else. And I'm just like, could you just give us a color story just without all of the extraness? So we'll see. And luckily with Glamlight, they do tend to have a lot of sales at like 30-40% off. So with them already being relatively affordable and those big discounts, it's one that I am looking at, but it's definitely not top tier. Definitely not VIP, but solid general admission. Next up, Oma Beauty. Oma Beauty is a black-owned beauty brand that I knew about it, but I didn't get into it until their Freedom palette last year. And since then, I have been obsessed with the formula. I think that they have amazing sparkle, amazing shine. It's just one of those brands that, like, I was like, why haven't we been talking about them before? And now that I know about them, I'm keeping my eye out. I do have like 4 or 5 of their palettes. I have all of their palettes because I kind of went a little bit crazy in terms of like their Black Magic palettes, and I bought all of them. And because I have all of them and they are really nice color stories, I kind of feel set. I feel like I'm in a good place with the Oma Beauty shadows. Now, depending on what they bring out this year, I think, you know, it could be a real toss-up for me, because I feel like I'm in a place where I'm comfortable and I have enough from them, but I also don't want to completely write them off, which is why they're in general admission, is because I want to see what else they bring out, because I think the Freedom palette was a revival for the brand. So hopefully they take that revival and keep pushing out good products. But I also don't feel like compelled to have to buy from them, because I have enough. I have a decent collection, and I'm good. Another brand on the to watch list is Kaleidos, or Kaleidos, however you want to pronounce it. I think that with Kaleidos, I expected more from them in 2022. You know, I have their Club Nebula palette that they did with Angelica Nyqvist, and then I also have the super bright, colorful one. What is that even called? The Escape Pod. And I like both of these palettes. I thought that both of these are so well done, and I used this one recently, and I still love the quality of these shadows. Where I have issues, or it's not even issues, but where this brand kind of fell off for me is that in 2022, they released these like quads and then some blushes, and then they all like just didn't really call to me. And where Kaleidos entered 2022 as one of my like brands to watch, they left 22 as one that I was kind of meh about, because of all those products that they released that just didn't exactly call to my spirit as much as I had hoped. So because I wasn't gravitating towards Kaleidos, you know, after seeing like the quads that they released, and they didn't release any big palettes at all whatsoever, I just was kind of like, meh. So now, instead of them being one of the top tier brands, it's one that I'm still looking at it, because quite frankly, their formula is superb, but I need them to give me a palette that's gonna draw me in, because it's not gonna be a quad. I don't want 4 shades that's going to give me one look. Like, don't give me 4 purple shades or 4 gray shades or 4 neutral shades. Give me at least a 9-pan palette or a 6-pan palette with some versatility. So it doesn't have to be the big ones that they put out, but something that gives me a little bit more, you know? Next up is Fantasy Cosmetica. This is a new brand to the scene. They came out last year with their Druid palette, which you know I'm obsessed with. And then they've had 2 palettes since then. I've received the last 2 palettes they released in PR. And I do have a code with the brand. And I love the Fantasy Cosmetica formula. I think that they do such a really good job at pairing mattes with shimmers in a way that a 9-pan palette has a lot more versatility than some other brands. I feel like I'm always able to get multiple looks, and sometimes with brands, when they do these 9-pan palettes, it's either very monochromatic or duochromatic, and I like the versatility that Fantasy Cosmetica gives me. They are pressed pigments for the most part, so it's very bright, vibrant looks, and it encourages me to play, and I'm hoping that I'm still getting PR this year from them, so I can keep showing you guys the palettes, but it's one that I'm definitely going to be watching, because as I try to curate my collection and not bring in too much, if I don't receive it in PR, I will be a lot more thoughtful about what I bring into my collection, and it will have to really depend on the color story that they put out. The next one is one that hurts me a little bit, but this is honestly, they're in the general admission because I need to use the ones that I have from the brand more, and that is Nabla Cosmetics. I speak very highly of Nabla Cosmetics because I think that they're a super underrated brand. Now, they are a UK-based brand, and for the most part, the easiest way to get them in the US is through Ulta. So oftentimes they'll be available on sale during the Ulta 21 Days of Beauty sale, and that's how I've pretty much built up my collection. And I will say that the quality that Nabla has is, in my opinion, on par with brands like Natasha Denona. They give you cream to powder mattes, you get topper shades, you get some duochrome shades, you get high shine, high sparkle, really blendable buttery mattes. Even if you don't get the cream to powder mattes, they have regular powder mattes. It's just such a variety of formulas and textures, all in a way that just makes sense and work well. It's also an Italian eyeshadow formula that's super high quality and cheaper than what you would pay for like Natasha Denona. So even without the sales, you can get it pretty cheap, but when you get it on sale, you can get it for like 50% off. And I have purchased so much of their cutie palettes, a couple of their big palettes, and I've always really enjoyed the looks that I get with the brand, but it's their palettes, I don't reach for them as frequently as I should. So that being said, when they do release, I'm always inclined to purchase, but I don't use it as much as I should. So I'm putting it in the general admission because I want to be a little bit more discerning about bringing in more Nabla palettes into my collection until I've like really started like digging into it more, using it up more, and then I can bring more in. But I'm always going to keep an eye on them because I do think that their formulas are amazeballs and just pretty underrated. The next brand is Melt Cosmetics, and Melt is overpriced. I don't know what else to say. I think they're overpriced. I think they have superb mattes. Their shimmers are mediocre at best, if you want to be real. And while I think that the quality is nice, I feel like for the price, it's not really adding up, because Melt prices are kind of on par with like Natasha Denona and Huda Beauty. And I do think that it might behoove you to spend your money on Natasha instead of on Melt. So while I like their products well enough, honestly, it's too hit or miss for me to say that Melt is a brand that I 100% want to shop from and buy from. I need a little bit more consistency from them before they become anything close to VIP. So I'm gonna keep an eye out, of course, because they honestly produce some of the best color stories out there, and that always draws me in. But I'm going to be like the person that waits for reviews to see if the quality is there before I pick it up. And on top of that, it has to be on sale. Just is what it is. Okay, Miss Charlotte Tilbury is next. Charlotte is a confusing brand for me because sometimes she does things really well, and then sometimes it's like a hot ass mess. And I think that, you know, with Charlotte, there are some things that work well. Like sometimes she has complexion products that are very diverse, and you can get it and you can get shades that span the gamut from the lightest to the deepest. And sometimes it's just like, so she didn't want no black people using her stuff. So it can be very confusing with her brand because not everything works. And like I said in my previous video, not everything has to work for everybody, which is why I'm not super like, you know, bothered by the fact that I can't use every product in her line. Now, when it comes to Charlotte's shadows though, she's extremely repetitive. Like it's gonna be pink, hella pink at that. Like y'all thought Patricia liked pink? No ma'am. Charlotte loves pink. So because Charlotte Tilbury always pretty much gives us a pink palette, it's like on that like, okay, do I really need another pink palette from Charlotte Tilbury? Absolutely not. And then this year, instead of her giving us her long palette for holidays, she gave us these singles that were overpriced as hell. So I was even more disinterested when I saw them singles. So, you know, it's a brand that, because I think Charlotte can put out some really solid products, I'm going to keep an eye out. But because it's really hit or miss with her as well, it's definitely general admission for Miss Tilbury. Okay, 4 brands left. And first up is Makeup by Mario. Makeup by Mario has some beautiful eyeshadow formulas, and I think in terms of the complexion stuff that they have too, I think those are also really nice. Overall, I think the brand is a little bit overpriced for what it is, but that's neither here nor there. But to stick with the eyeshadow formula for a bit, I think his Ethereal Eyes palette was severely overpriced for what it is. Like, it wasn't worth the $68. And I'm saying that Makeup by Mario is going to be in general admission specifically because I want to see if this is where he's planning to keep going, because he does have other eyeshadow palettes in his line that are significantly cheaper, like $20 cheaper with more shades or the exact amount of shades. So I am confusion and interested in seeing whether he's going to stick with this $68 price tag and release more palettes going forward, or he's planning to just release less. Because if we're also being honest, the Ethereal Eyes palette was the first palette that he released since his inception with the 3 eyeshadow palettes that he released. So it had been a couple of years between the two. So I don't know what it's going to look like for him into the new year. I know he just put out his foundation. So I'm always kind of like eyeing Makeup by Mario to see what's going on there in his camp. And I'm willing to pick up the products, but on sale and, you know, at a discount. But it's one that I'm always like curious, because I do love his makeup aesthetic. You know, I think that his makeup style is one that interests me and calls to me a lot. So I'm intrigued by the brand, but I'm just going to be watching to see from afar and being very picky and choosy about what I decide to bring in from that brand. Next, ABH. Anastasia has been through a bit of a revival with her shadows, and I really do enjoy the new eyeshadow formula. I have the Rose Metals and the Nouveau palettes, both of which have this sort of elevated matte formula as well as an elevated metallic formula that I think just represents the brand really well in a way that it's very familiar to the old formula but better, which I appreciate, because I'm glad they didn't deviate too far from the old formula. And I'm really interested to see what they do into the new year, because, you know, ABH has gone through this phase of them, you know, releasing palettes like consistently, and then people being like, okay, stop, and then stopping for a long time, and now coming back out with 2 sort of new palettes. I'm wondering if, you know, we're gonna get a lot of palettes in 2023 or only a couple of palettes in 2023. Also, I know there was a point when they had like more complexion products and other products, so I don't know if we're going to see more of that in the new year as well, but I'm interested. My interest has been piqued, so I will definitely be keeping an eye out for them. And I'm still gonna be very, very picky about what I bring in from the brand, and it's definitely gonna be on sale, especially because ABH goes on sale, because I don't think that they have the same level of hype that they did. You know, like back in the day, their palettes used to just sell out, but now that people have a lot more choice, the $55, and is it still 55? I think it's 55. The $55 price tag for ABH is really steep, and because it doesn't sell out, you can oftentimes get it at 30% off if you just wait a couple months. So, you know, that's gonna be my game plan. And then the second to last brand is Chanel. I have one Chanel quad, and I really, really like it. And I like the Chanel formula because it's that kind of soft, effortless glow that I didn't expect to like as much as I did. Now, I know Chanel can be really picky, and there are some quads that are just, you know, not gonna look great on me. And I know that it can be really hit or miss, so that's why it's in this general admission category, because I think you have to be really discerning with the Chanel brand, both in terms of the fact that the quality is not as consistent or, you know, as some other brands, and the fact that they are extremely expensive. Like, I complain about Tom Ford and his $90 quads, but the Charlotte Tilbury quads are like $68, and I know the Tweed collection I think was more expensive at $88. So the price is a bit much, And because of that, I want to be very, very careful about what I bring in from Chanel. Make sure that I'm using it. Make sure that I absolutely love it. Because I can't have Chanel palettes in my collection or any Chanel products in my collection that are just okay. Especially not when they cost as much as they do. And then the last brand that's on this sort of general admission list is Byredo. And I'm being very specific about Byredo because I don't think that I necessarily want the little Byredo palettes. I have the limited edition giant Flora Kalahari palette, which I like, and that was $90 something. And I know that these smaller ones are only like 6 shades and they're like $68 or something like that. And in terms of like quantity, two very different, you know, price per shade. So I'm looking at Byredo from the perspective solely of picking up their limited edition giant palettes when they come out, and I think they do maybe one a year, so that's all I'm looking at from this brand. I don't think I need anything else, but that's why they're on the list, is because of that one palette. And I really like the formula in that because it is that more satin-like formula that's, you know, very similar to Tom Ford and Chanel, and just perfect for if you have textured lids or if you just want something that's a little bit softer, because I like those softer shades when I need to do sort of more work corporate appropriate things. So definitely that's on my short list. Okay. Whew, that was long. Okay, so that was long, but to, you know, sort of wrap things up in a nice little bow, my VIP list is 7 brands and my general admission list is 11 brands. So overall, that's 18 brands that I'm really, really keeping an eye out on. Now, that doesn't mean that there are other brands that I'm not going to be looking at, like, you know, Lisa Eldridge and, you know, other brands that I am interested in seeing what's coming down the pike. But these are just sort of the ones that are kind of like top of my mind, top of my list, that I am hoping to pay closer attention to. So that's it from me for this video. I want to know what brands are on your VIP list. What brands are on your general admission list? You know, what are the brands that you have sort of narrowed in and focused in on, or are planning to focus in on for 2023? Leave that down in the comments below and just let me know what you're thinking about in terms of that short list of brands. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe on your way out and ring that notification bell so you never miss out when I upload. I have 2 to 3 videos coming for you guys every single week. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching and supporting and spending a little bit of your time with me today. I appreciate it more than you know. And as always, I will catch you in my next video. Bye!